Good morning, everybody. Try that again. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming to Vegas. We really appreciate you being here. My name is Paul Kautza. I'm the Director of Education for the Data Warehousing Institute. I'm the guy who's responsible for the classes you're in and the instructors that you have throughout the week, and would really appreciate feedback and input you can give me through that. And hopefully you guys are going to get a lot out of this week. Just a quick show of hands. How many is time this is your first TDWI conference? All right. Now, how many is it more than one? Hold your hands up and keep them up. See all the hands that are up now? All of you people at their first time, seek some of these people out, because there's a lot more that you can get out of this conference than just what you get out of the classrooms. A lot of networking opportunities. Somebody in this room has a similar problem to you and has probably solved that problem at some point in time. So use the networking opportunities, use the exhibit hall time, use the pieces to get to know the people sitting at your table and the people in this room, because there's a lot of knowledge embedded in this room that you can get a lot out of. So with that, just a couple of housekeeping pieces. Classes tomorrow morning will start sharply at 8 a.m. In the Executive Summit, people at an Executive Summit, when you go out of the room, it's just to your left on this floor, and your breakfast will be there tomorrow as well. For the main conference, the breakfast will be downstairs by the registration area. So 8 a.m. tomorrow, Executive Summit up here, main conference downstairs. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce this morning's keynote presenter, Jill Dyché. Jill Dyché has been an enthusiastic faculty member and supporter of TDWI since 1994. That was our inception. Then, as a partner and co-founder of Baseline Consulting, she counseled executive teams and boards of directors on the strategic importance of their analytic investments. She worked with companies such as Microsoft, Charles Schwab, Verizon, the French National Railroad, and Walt Disney companies have relied on Jill's counsel for aligning business and IT. Jill's work has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Newsweek.com, Computer World, and Forbes, among others. She is the author of 3 books on the business value of information. The last one, Consumer Data Integration, Reaching a Single Version of the Truth, which she co-authored with Evan Levy, was the first book on the topic of master data management. Her forthcoming book, called The New IT, focuses on new organizational models for aligning business and corporate IT, aligning corporate IT with lines of business. Jill's company, Baseline, was acquired by SAS in 2011, where Jill is now Vice President of their Best Practices team. So with that, I welcome Jill Dyché.
Hey, good morning, everybody. So today we're going to try something a little different. For those of you who are on Twitter, you'll see the hashtags here, the TDWI LV 2014, and you'll see New IT as a hashtag. And as Paul said, I'm writing my 4th book on the new IT, and it's essentially how IT organizations are changing, how they have to change. And so this morning, what would be cool is, as I'm talking, if you're tweeting and you've got questions or suggestions for the book, let's do some crowdsourcing, because I'm still writing it right now. It's supposed to be out in Q3, but I'm still working on it. So if you've got ideas, one of the findings in the book, and one of the findings that we've seen in our work with customers, is that analytics can really serve as the petri dish for IT transformation. Successful analytics programs can actually influence IT, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that this morning. So those of you on Twitter, tweet away.
You don't know what you're talking about. Actually, I do. You would just listen to me for a second. I've heard it all before, man. You think this is something new? I've been at this for years, my friend. Years. You guys just don't listen. We don't listen. Oh, I'm sick. That's it now. You're going down. Bruce? Spin it.
Are you sure?
Spin it.
Okay. Right foot red.
Hey, did we get those requirements on Monday? What is a holiday? Oh, you know what I mean.
All right, look familiar? All right, so, there is a conundrum right now between the business and IT. And those of us who have been working with BI and with data have lived that already. And, these are some of the phenomena that we continue to face on our teams right now. If we're on the business side, we're looking at IT and we're expecting them to increase their velocity. We're cynical about that, right? And we've seen the development delays. We've also seen the increasing, the comfort level that we've got now with emerging technologies. So this trend of consumerization of IT is coming home to roost now in the business organizations. We're more tech savvy than we've ever been before. So why do we need IT? We've also got the phenomenon of we've got more relationships externally with our companies, right? So we have consulting relationships on our own. We've got cloud solutions that we're engaging with outside of the partnerships with IT. And so we've got those external partnerships that we're cultivating on our own without IT. We're reluctant to replace what's working, so as IT comes to us with potential new solutions and new innovations, we know what's working in our lines of business and we're reluctant to change those things unless they're not working, in which case we may actually have a better solution than our IT organizations. And finally, from the business side, we're being increasingly cynical about IT's intentions. What I've heard from my clients is, well, we don't listen to them because they're just resume building. They don't really have a solution. They just want this thing on their resume, whatever it is. So there's a lot of cynicism in the business when it comes to IT. And likewise, in IT, there's a lot of cynicism about the business, and a lot of us have seen this as well, right? So we're equal opportunity here. They're not engaging with us. And from the IT side, what that looks like is the business lacks the transparency to share its strategy with us. Those of you who were in my class yesterday, we talked about this. Sometimes our analytics are only as valid as where our company is going strategically. And if we don't know where our company is going strategically, how well can we develop new solutions? We're unfamiliar with strategic direction and priorities because our executives aren't transparent. Our management isn't transparent about who the company wants to be and where it's going. And again, how well can we do under those circumstances? And we become a report factory, and that's not where we want to be. It's not strategic enough, it's not proactive enough, and we've earned the right to do more. We're eager to innovate. We've got a lens into new emerging technologies, and we see how they apply at our company. And so we want to proselytize the value of some of these new innovative emerging technologies, some of which you'll see this week when you're at the floor here. And all these new vendors, it's amazing the level of innovation that's happening, not only on the analytics side, but on the data side. We're also struggling to choreograph our pipelines. And inasmuch as there are very proven ways to prioritize what we're doing for our lines of business, it's very difficult when certain people are louder and more enthusiastic than others. We all know that squeaky wheel syndrome, right? But it's also difficult when there are competing business priorities, and some lines of business actually have more budget than others. And cross-charging is still a real thing. So finally, we're unlikely to experience the value of our work because we've been commoditized by the business. The business sees us as just taking their direction. And then we furnish what they've asked for, and we never see the value of our work. We never see how our analytics tools are used in the context of real business problems. And so what happens here is that there's cynicism on both sides. Business people are thinking, well, there's got to be a better way to do this to increase the velocity of delivery. And IT's thinking, they don't get how hard it is, and they don't have a full perspective of everything we're working on and what's in our pipeline, so they don't really understand us. Neither party has the organizational authority or, in a lot of cases, the skill set to define or redefine the rules of engagement between the two organizations. And so what happens is there's spin. There's excuse making. You know, and we've all read those books about, you know, death by meeting. You know, we go to our corners and we marginalize each other, and as a result of that, nothing happens. And as some of you who have been in BI for a while know, we're often only as valid in the organization as our last dashboard. So the "what have you done lately for me" syndrome is alive and well in both IT and the business. I'm a judge on the TDWI Best Practice Awards, and when I read the applications, it's really interesting because there's still a lot of feeds and speeds with some of these companies that are applying to be a TDWI Best Practice. But what we're finding now is the winners, the companies that actually win these awards. It's not so much about how big the data warehouse is or how many tools you have in your BI portfolio, as much as it is about regular delivery velocity. My rule of thumb is either new data or new functionality every 3 to 4 months. Keeps it warm with end users. New data or new functionality every 3 to 4 months. That's, in BI, that's agile. And by the way, we can serve multiple constituencies through that shared data and through that reuse. And we're keeping those relationships warm as well. So one of the aha moments in BI for me is that BI maturity has very little to do with technology and everything to do with delivery. BI maturity is delivery. It's not the newest technology. It's not even the amount of data you have or how long you've had your competency center. It's about how regularly and how well you deliver analytic solutions. And so where does this leave IT? Where does this leave the CIO? Well, from a business perspective, you know, the good news is the bad news. Business is getting its own IT funding. So there are studies now that say that in 10 years, the CMO is going to have more IT budget than the CIO is going to have. Okay, so is that good news or bad news? Well, if you're a CMO, it's great news. And we're going digital, and it's going to be really great. But where does that leave IT? We're also finding a phenomenon that started about 7 years ago, and I call it requirements fatigue. The days of getting everybody in a room and having a facilitated session about what your analytics requirements are over. You know, we now have clients asking us to give them health checks, but not talk to any end users. Why is that? Because those end users are tired. They've already talked to a bunch of consultants. They've already talked to a bunch of internal people about their needs. You know, their knowledge only goes so far, and they have day jobs. So what we're finding is these new millennials that are working in these organizations actually have a lot less patience, and they want a lot faster delivery, even if that means delivery on a smaller scale. And finally, executives are getting impatient with development pipelines. You know, the agile mentality, real or imagined, has become part of corporate folklore. And one of the things we're finding with BI is the companies that can deliver either new data or new functionality every 3 to 4 months actually set a standard for the rest of IT. Again, good news and bad news. But what we're finding is in a lot of cases, analytics and BI programs are ahead of the pack when it comes to some of those fast delivery methods. So meantime, the business is out carving out its own relationships because now we have our own budget. I wrote a Harvard Business Review blog a couple months ago called Shadow IT is Out of the Closet. And what I argued was, you're not going to put it back into the box. So how do we adapt and work with it? And in the meantime, IT executives are getting twitchy. They're getting less budget as that money goes over to the business side. And so in as much as they're trying to reformulate their internal brands, they're struggling with having less money to do things like innovate. We've also got them being under pressure, that whole "what have you done for me lately" syndrome. You know, how are you of value beyond maintaining our infrastructure? You know, that no CIO wants to be in that business anymore. But what CIOs are struggling with is as they want to shed the commodity technologies, those are the very technologies that they're known for. And then we've got emerging solutions which risk marginalizing internal shared IT groups. cloud. You know, you can do big data in the cloud now. What do I need IT for? You know, we've got systems integrators that you can outsource everything to. Right? So there are alternatives that are increasingly friendly to the business. So what's happening is executives are exploring new models. They're looking at how to not only stay relevant, but to continue to drive value without keeping that infrastructure brand alive. I know that this particular slide is a bit of an eyesore, but essentially, you know, who do we want to be? And in writing my book, I've already talked to about 20 CIOs, and what's really fascinating is strategy and culture are starting to inform where these CIOs are going with IT more than what they consider IT best practices, more than what their standard vendor solutions look like. And so what we're finding is that as CIOs start to redefine themselves, they need to redefine their entire organizations. So when I started to write this book, I started to come up with these personas for CIOs, you know, and I was, you know, thinking about, oh, you know, the change agent. And then I realized that it's really not about the CIO, it's about the behavior of the entire organization. So I pulled back from that chapter, and instead I'm typifying IT organizations, and the first question we need to ask the CIO as he or she is rebranding IT is, who do you want to be? Who do you want your organization to be? And if we can ask that question, then we can identify what are the challenges now that are pushing this kind of transformation. If we understand the challenges, we can actually choose the kind of organizational model we want, and I'll talk about those in a minute. Then we can actually plan against that new desired state. And then we can proselytize, we can lead, we can actually talk to people about the role IT plays, whether it's strategic or operational in the organization. We can do the internal PR, and we can solidify our value to the organization based on our culture. One of the CIOs profiled in the book is Michael Smith. He's the CIO of Mylan Pharmaceuticals. And one of the things he said to me was, when he joined Mylan from Nike, it was a big change for him. He went from a very large consumer packaged goods, very well branded company to a pharmaceutical company with a completely different culture, and came in as a change agent, came in with that knowledge that, hey, I'm applying some other best practices into a new industry here, and had the permission of the CEO to do it, by the way. And the thing he said that was really interesting was he realized when he took over IT at Mylan, culture trumps everything. Culture trumps strategy. And so we need to meet the culture, we need to meet the company's culture where it's at. And if we can do that, we can actually change IT and meet the business where it's at. And so the 6 models that I've come up with are actually, there's no wrong answer. Sure, there's a maturity curve here, maybe, but it's really what's right for your organization. And the value of these models is twofold. One, where are we? And 2, do we want to stay there? The first model in the upper left-hand corner is the operations model. This is the IT organization that's simply running the business operationally. You know, it may be a big legacy mainframe organization. It may be one of those telcos whose value is still keeping those billing systems going. The question is that enough for the business to continue? The next one is order taking. And a lot of you in the BI and analytics world understand that model, right? The users come to us, they explain what they need, we build it. So you can sort of see how we're creeping toward business enablement here. You know, the good news about order taking is it's relationship building. The bad news is it renders us reactive. But again, if that works within our culture, let's be that. Okay, so this can serve as a current state assessment or a desired state wish list. The next one is alignment. The alignment model essentially says we've got firm and established rules of engagement. I talked to James Dallas, who's the former CIO of Medtronic, and he has this great model for reviewing the business plans of all the lines of business at Medtronic according to corporate strategy, and then absorbing and ingesting all those plans into a central IT roadmap, and then republishing that IT roadmap back to the businesses so they can each see how their strategic plans would be enabled by IT. And it was almost this closed loop. So it's very effective in not only keeping business engagement, but regularly communicating progress. So the alignment model can be very key. We've also got down on the lower left, innovating, the innovating model. And we're finding that now with the companies that were born digital. You know, they have the freedom to innovate, they've got the mandate to innovate, and frankly, a lot of them are unencumbered by the legacy systems that a lot of us have and have had for years. And so they're more nimble at innovation. Arguably, all of us need to innovate. It's just a question of the freedom we have to do that within a culture that may be very entrenched. The next one is brokering. What we're finding with some IT is that IT is pulling back on building anything and instead is becoming a thinner layer of enablement, where instead of just taking in orders and requirements, we will understand the requirements and reach out to the appropriate partners both within and outside the organization to broker the deal to the right people to build it, whether it's in the cloud, a systems integrator, or an internal development organization. So IT becomes more of a clearinghouse and a broker to foster relationships between the demand and the supply. We're seeing that as a big trend right now in CIO identities. I'm becoming less of a builder and more of a broker. And then finally, there's the trend of IT everywhere. James Dallas at Medtronic talked about, as he was leaving the company, he started to put the pieces in place to shed IT, not completely, but to push technology enablement out to the business units that own it. Again, a very thin layer of shared services, but essentially business ownership of IT almost completely. So in those 6 models, you can see the differences in the identities. And a lot of people say, well, Jill, you talk a lot about strategy. You talk a lot about strategic alignment with IT and a lot of strategic alignment with BI. Where's the strategy model here? The answer to that is strategy is in all these things depending on the company you work for. And it's fascinating because if you look at the average CIO tenure being something like 3.2 years at a company, the reason for that is because either the CIO comes in and he's a change agent and he's got one behavior in mind and he sees the company, you know, and can't change that very entrenched behavior. Say he comes from an innovating company to an operations company and really cannot change that very cemented environment. Or he's already in the company and wants to push to another model and the company doesn't follow. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Again, very cultural. And a lot of it has to do with executive leadership and the support of C-level leaders in helping drive that transformation.
Listen up. I want you all on a linear regression formation. Janice, I want you to unhook around the open source. Dak, your performance manager. I want you in the backfield for best practices that CRM gets to be too much. Carl, don't forget about governance. You hear me? Steve, one more. Virtualization. Got it? All right, listen, everybody just run out there and I'll throw a Hail Mary pass to whoever's open, okay? And break!
So it's interesting because we got to learn to play nice. And again, what we're finding is in analytics organizations and in BI PMOs, we're finding that that alignment exists, not just because we've got the relationships with the business users that we enable, but because we have the processes to do so. And increasingly what we're finding as a best practice is on BI teams, we're strategically aligned. I tell the story of, at Baseline we had this banking client, they were a regional bank, and we had gone in and we had built their BI strategy for them. And about 2 months after we were done, we were in the middle of implementing their first BI application, and they got a new executive vice president of retail banking. And this guy came in, he did a listening tour for about 4 weeks, and then he convened all his direct reports, including the director of enterprise BI. And he said, look, I know you guys are all working on your budgets, and you're all going to present them to me for the next fiscal year. I want you to know that if you're proposing new projects and they don't adhere to at least one of these 4 criteria, I'm not going to fund them. And the 4 criteria were they have to decrease cost per dollar, revenues. They have to increase customer satisfaction. They have to increase customer acquisition rates, right? So more customers, or the projects have to increase revenue per transactions. So if your proposed project doesn't do at least one of these things, don't come to me for funding, because I'm not going to fund it. So meantime, the BI team is panicked. They're like, wow, we've just created this entire strategy. We have our development portfolio. We've got a pipeline. We're working. Now we have to scale back. There's new rules. And by the way, this guy was essentially, coming from the place of, what are the company's overarching goals for the next year? Here they are. So if your project doesn't fulfill at least one of these things, we're not going to do it. Okay, so that's very justified. It's very strategic. What we did is we went back and we inventoried everything in the BI program pipeline, and it turns out that those applications on the left all adhered to at least one of those strategic goals. And we actually recalibrated some of them. You can see that the sales reporting dashboard adhered to all 4. So what we did is we reprioritized that one and sent it to the top. Then we had a meeting with the EVP. We scheduled 30 minutes on his calendar, and we said, we want you to know that we're strategically aligned. After 10 minutes, he said, go, you're good. I make this point in a lot of the presentations I give, which is the minute you can attach your BI and analytics strategy to corporate strategy, executives won't say no. The point then is to make that happen on a larger scale with IT. Analytics and BI PMOs and competency centers have been ahead of the curve with this. And now we can apply those best practices to a larger cross-section of the organization and make IT relevant. And one of the ways to do that is through analytics. Irrespective of the model, irrespective of the organizational behavior profile, analytics can enable it. What's interesting about analytics right now, as CIOs go through their identity crisis, they have recognized that BI and analytics is their top priority for 2014, according to Gartner, into 2017. They've named it number 1 on their lists of priorities, analytics and BI, among all those other things that they're doing. And by the way, number 2, operations, infrastructure. Some guy just went, woo. So yeah, where analytics can transform not only the company, we can transform the identity of the IT organization.
We can take these guys. James.
He's got girl arms and chicken legs.
Ready?
Ready.
Brilliant, boss. Bring it on, baby. Look at him!
how are we playing together? Are we playing together? What are those rules of engagement? People have a proclivity to just want to use a template to engage the business. And in fact, what we found is that there are certain behaviors to be aware of when it comes to bringing people to the table. Whether you're on the business side and you're trying to articulate your needs better to IT, or whether you're on the IT side and you're trying to convince the business back to the table. But what's interesting is between business and IT, the motivations are different. And so as we've worked with clients, we've taken note of the fact that the motivations can be used to entice people to collaborate or to re-collaborate. If you look at the business, what's interesting about business motivations is that they are drawn to reasons to participate based on things like the culture of measurement. If our companies measure people on their successes and penalize them for their failures, business people are very aware of that. Often, their bonuses are tied to this. So I'm being measured on the following, and I'm getting compensated on the following. I was just talking to a CMO recently, and she was saying, you know, my measurements have all changed. I'm now measured on return on marketing investment, ROMI. And therefore, data is more important to me than ever, and I can't wait for the rest of the organization. So I'm going to start data governance in marketing. Okay, so measurement matters to business people. So does a culture of strategy. You know, if they have a stake in a strategic initiative, that matters. Less so seniority. You know, my job title, it matters, but not so much. The similarity of the project to other successful projects really is not a huge factor in bringing the business to the table. Management edict. If a CEO says this is important, business people will play. We're seeing that a lot in financial services and insurance companies right now with things like voice of the customer projects, or in manufacturing and CPG with supply chain optimization. Very highly visible, highly funded strategic projects bring the business to the table. And the tenure at the company, sort of medium, how long you've been at the company, how loyal you might be. Compare that with IT. Culture of measurement doesn't matter as much to IT people. Stake in a strategic initiatives doesn't matter as much to IT people. Seniority doesn't matter at all. It doesn't matter what your job title is. It's not an indicator of whether you'll play. The similarity of the project to other successful projects matters a lot to IT people because they've seen things work and they've seen the halo effect. And IT people do want to be involved in other successful projects. Management edict, important, but not as important as it is to business people. And then tenure at the company doesn't matter at all. So it's really interesting because the more we factor in motivations and how people are measured and rewarded, the better we can enlist them to participate. And we're finding that true not only on the micro scale of analytics, but on the meta scale of the organization at large. And a culture of measurement really matters. But again, I go back to, when in doubt, look at highly visible strategic initiatives and piggyback on those if you can. Not only in terms of activity, because analytics and BI can actually be the tipping point for a lot of those strategic organizations, but in terms of funding. If you can piggyback on the funding, analytics can really enhance a lot of those strategic business initiatives. So this is the slide where people start to throw vegetables at me, but it's one of the things that we're seeing, again, in analytics and more widely in IT. And those of you who are in the big data world, this is very interesting because if you go to a big data conference, what we find is that big data conferences focus on two things. They focus on platform. So we've all heard about Hadoop. Lots of platform talk, a lot of grid computing and memory stuff at these conferences. And the other thing they focus on is analytics. How are we analyzing all this new unstructured, multi-structured data? What they don't focus on is data, ironically. Okay, so here at TDWI, you got a lot of data presentations today. You know, Evan Levy's talking about how to build a data strategy today. We're mixing it up because we've lived the drama in the analytics world even before big data came on the scene. My prediction is, over time, BI is going to become commoditized. It's already in the cloud. It's not going to be that thing that CIOs grab onto, in as much as analytics and advanced analytics are still important. We're commoditizing BI. The tools are getting easier to use and cheaper. They're more and more increasingly being owned by lines of business. So that's not going to be the differentiator either for IT or for our companies. Okay, data is. Why is that? Because data is the hard part. And those of us in the BI and analytics community that have been working on data warehousing for years are often the only people in our companies that truly understand the drama of data integration. We're the only people, sometimes the data warehouse is the only platform in the company that actually brings together heterogeneous data and not only co-locates it, but integrates it. So we have that experience, and a lot of times we've transcended the wall that the big data crowd hasn't even yet hit. Right? We're just loading a bunch of native data in Hadoop. What are you going to do with it? We don't know yet. Well, guess what? You know, as Hive and Hive SQL start to hit the market, they're going to face the same challenges that those of us in the data warehousing community have already confronted and overcome. So if you're looking for career growth, what we're finding is, yeah, analytics is super important. BI is becoming a little bit more commoditized. Data is where the future is. And if you've been involved in analytics projects at all, you're probably very data savvy as well. As we go through the week, here are some things to think about. Not only in terms of BI, data warehousing, analytics, and data, but in terms of the new IT. So as you're going through the week taking these classes, think about if your executives had to learn one lesson about analytics, what would it be? Because I can guarantee you that that lesson applies on a broader scale to IT as a whole. Think about if we were to modernize BI and analytics, what would we do first? What does modernization look like? This is another buzzword in IT circles right now, IT modernization. That means different things to different people depending on our incumbent infrastructure right now. If we were to monetize BI, how do we do that? And a lot of us are leaving that conversation on the table, by the way. Our BI and analytics solutions in the context of our data warehouses are often saving money, cost savings, or they're generating revenue. And we're not actually doing the internal PR to proselytize that value. We could be leading the way on behalf of IT in those conversations. It's the monetization of BI and analytics is a huge, huge deal. And we're taking it for granted. We're making the company money. And finally, if I were in charge, you know, bwahaha, you know, if I were in charge, what would I do? But again, what we're finding is that corporations and IT departments have a lot to learn from analytics organizations and BI teams. And so my challenge to you is you are the master. Let the rest of the company sit at your feet and go out and teach people. Thank you very much.